Season 5 of the Kashif Booth podcast is proudly sponsored by Taylor.Style, a men's fashion styling subscription service, which uses AI and professional stylists to find the right clothes for your next event. Whether it's a business work trip, a movie premiere, Taylor.Style can cater all the needs for you, and you don't need to keep the clothes. You can hire them and send them back once you're done. With their several different subscription packages, you can get clothes monthly or quarterly. Taylor is perfect for the busy man on the go, or if you are working in the film or TV industry and you need some clothes for your latest production, hit up Taylor.Style. You can be able to get reasonable clothes at great prices and no fuss. You can return them when you're done. It's so easy. There's just 5 simple steps. You curate the clothes that you need it for, then you get a new package of clothes in 2 to 3 business days, and then when you're done, swap them out for new ones and enjoy. And then you can repeat the whole process whenever you need a new set of wardrobe for whatever event or occasion that you're attending. Get 25% off your first monthly or quarterly plan by using Kashif at checkout or Kashif QTR. Check them out at Taylor.Style. Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Kashif Booth podcast. If you're new here, each week I sit down with a guest and we discuss their career so far, the highs, the lows, and what's next for them. Today's guest is Kimberly Mcintosh. She is a writer, former Labour councillor, and is a Windrush campaigner. Welcome to the show, Kim.
Thank you so much for having me. I must say, love your content, so really excited to be here.
Likewise. Kim and I, we're both like on TikTok, doing our thing. Love your commentary, love the awareness you're bringing all the time. So I was like, look, if I'm talking about the election, I need you on here and I will definitely have you back. I already know. So how are you? How's your week been so far? How's things going? You know, it's hump day and all that.
It is hump day, but I'm having a good week. So you mentioned that I do campaigning on the Windrush scandals. So we're planning a campaign at the moment as we kind of build up to Windrush Day, which is on the 22nd of June. And yeah, we're making progress with it. So that feels exciting. And the sun has been out also. So I'm like...
Correct.
Yeah, exactly. Feeling so much better.
You know, with this country, and we've lived here our whole lives, so we know, okay? I think spring, and I saw someone say this on TikTok the other day, I think spring is our best time of the year because it's not too cold. We get a bit of wind, you know, in the mornings, but then the sun comes out and it's consistent, you know? Summer is where it's like, yeah.
What are you going to
get?
Know
what you're going to get. So you know what? As long as the sun's out, no more daylight savings, you know, it's feeling good. So 100%.
For sure.
So tell me about you, Kimberly. You are a writer, you know, former Labour councillor, Windrush campaigner. So like, how did you get started in this world of like politics?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And yeah, I've done quite a lot of stuff. They are all interconnected, but they can seem quite random. But I got my career start at a charity called the National Council for Voluntary Organisations. I did a trainee policy officer role there, with low pay, but they did train me up, which was great. So it was good. And they did pay me. So, you know, grateful for that. But then I worked at a think tank that works on racial justice called the Runnymede Trust. And I was there for 3.5 years. And I got to work on loads of cool stuff. So I worked on the Windrush Justice campaign in 2018 around that time, but also on things like the impact of austerity on Black and Asian women across different income levels. So how do those policy changes that the government put in affect Asian women and Black women, but, you know, who are on lower incomes, middle incomes, higher incomes. And yeah, I loved it. It was a really cool job. And I also got to write a bit when I was working there. So if we launched some new research, get to write about it in a newspaper or go onto the news and talk about it. So yeah, it was a pretty amazing opportunity and I'm like super grateful for my time there. But at the same time, I was writing for an online magazine called Galdem, which doesn't, because I'm like, you know, Galdem was so amazing.
Classic. I wish it could come back, but yes.
I miss it so much. I don't know, it just filled such a gap.
Yes.
For so many, like there are so many stories now where I'm like, oh, Galdem would have been amazing at covering that, and it's such a shame it's not there anymore. But yeah, I started out there, and yeah, quite a few of my peers actually have come from there and like done amazing stuff. So yeah, forever grateful to them. But I started writing for them, a lot about my personal life, not gonna lie. So a lot of my personal life's on the internet, but also about politics. Yeah, so I used to write for them, and then through them also got more opportunities for kind of like newspapers like The Guardian, and stuff. So you're very, very grateful for that. And then all of that helped me to kind of think about what I wanted to do after that. And I've always loved writing. That's why I reached out to Galdem. And I started thinking about a book idea, which was about how would I combine kind of all the policy stuff that I learned at Runnymede and the writing that I learned through Galdem, them giving me an opportunity, like using personal stories to talk about political problems. And so I worked on that for about a year, and then sold that in the pandemic to HarperCollins. And then that came out in 2023. That came out in 2023. So it's called Black Girl No Magic, and it's an essay collection that I wrote.
Amazing.
Yeah, so it's been... Oh, and then that I haven't even spoken about the politics thing. I forgot you did ask me that as well. So then I did... so one of my friends was involved with my local Labour Party. I live in South London, and she was like trying to get people to think about running to be a local councillor. So kind of like similar structure to being an MP, but way less money. Okay. You get paid 12 grand a year. MPs are on the big bucks. Councillors not so much. And you're a representative for your local area. So local public services, like if your bin collection's not great, if the foxes are getting into your compost bin every other week, that's the kind of stuff your local council deals with. But also like massive things like adult social care, children's services, also like actually really big and important stuff, which is why like having a conversation today about kind of local elections coming up and what that means and is really important, because it's not as sexy as a general election, but it actually has a big impact on your day-to-day life and the area that you live in.
Wow. Well, you've done a lot. It's very impressive. I love hearing all of that. Honestly, it is. I always ask that question when I have guests on my show, because I feel like it's great to hear people's journey. You know, people always see the right now, but they don't know like all this hard work has come from it. And I think it's always good to have just multifaceted paths in your career. I think as millennial, well, I'm a millennial, but like, okay, just because, you know, black don't crack, so you never know. Like, honestly,
I just got asked out by a 25-year-old today. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. Happens all the time. Yeah. Like, so many are like, oh, I thought you was my age. I'm like, I love that for me.
Yeah, okay? Yeah, exactly. For me.
Exactly. Because one of my interviewees a few weeks ago, he was like, oh, I've just graduated uni. I was like, come again? But I was like, in my face, I did a good poker face, because he did not know I was thinking he was my age. Okay. So, you know, as a millennial, I think we've had so much, like, you know how we always say, like, we were told, go to uni, get a job, work hard, you'll be success. It was so ingrained in us in school. And then we went into the real world and it was like, oh, okay. I mean, at 16, when we were I was in college, right? That's when the credit crunch hit. So it was like already things were crumbling around to me. So I was like, whoa. So like now the way I have multiple different sources of income, because I'm I've done so many different things and it still keeps going. So I love that. I really love hearing that journey. But like working with like Labour, being a Labour councillor and stuff like that. And I'm from South London, so we need a lot. My borough is Lambeth, so
okay. That's going to be a really exciting election.
Exactly. So I'm still I have my postal vote that I need to do, and I'm still just like, who do I go for? Like, it's still, but we'll get into that. And it's like, how long were you a Labour councillor for? And like, I know you touched on it a little bit, but like, what made you want to do that, especially for your area and where you live?
Yeah, so I was a Labour councillor for 2 years, and the full term is four. So I lasted half my term. I didn't even last the whole term,
Mm-hmm.
which we can get into. But the reason that I wanted to run is it's not something I did think I could be a good politician because, I love policy. I'm a big nerd. I'm very interested in like how can we try and make decisions that serve people who are like at the sharpest end of the worst things, like how can we help people who are struggling the most? And I'd worked in that. And so I thought, oh, okay, I could be well placed for that. I also like people. You have to do a lot of like talking to people, knocking on people's doors, asking how they are as part of the role. And I actually enjoy that. I like talking to residents, asking them how they feel about things. And that is a big part of it. But honestly, like it's quite, I don't know if it's nerdy or a bit like kitsch, but I actually think like serving your community is a huge honor. I really do. I think it's a huge privilege. And yeah, to be able to do that. And it's a big responsibility as well. And I thought maybe I could be good at it, but it also feels like, yeah, God, I hate to say a calling because it just sounds so cringe. But like, yeah, I don't know, it kind of does. And I'd always done stuff like I'd done research and yeah, and then you talk about it in the media and then you try and influence MPs or the government at the time to try and implement the stuff that you found out works or hopefully will work. And I thought that actually being able to be on the other side of it where you get to try and deliver those things and implement those things would also be interesting, like being on the other side of it and being able to hopefully see the impact of what those decisions do, I thought would be really cool. And it was, but it was much harder than I anticipated.
Because I would assume the reason why you obviously got into politics was because you enjoy people, you want to make change, and we need more people like us in those spaces making active change instead of it being people who look like us but don't want to be us, And I think and I get it, but then sometimes when you're in those spaces with whatever industry you're in, you see like, okay, I don't know if I can make real change to a certain degree, but then you see a lot of black MPs and politicians who've just stuck in it because you know what, if I'm not here, it's gonna be even worse than what it was. So I definitely understand that, but I think it's great that you even 2 years is still long. You may not have done your full term, but 2 years is still better than Liz Truss. Okay,
Yeah, that's true.
listen, because I interviewed another political commentator last week, and I was like, what was her name again? Like, that's where it's come. Like, the third female prime minister, and I'm like, what's her name again?
Like, I don't know her.
It is. Yeah, literally. So I definitely understand that. So yeah, so it's good to hear just your journey as well in that as well. And you have touched a little bit on, your Windrush campaigner. I mean, I think that's great. I mean, the scandal happened, in 2017? And, it's, 9 years? Almost 10 years? And, I think the Windrush scandal and the continuous brushing under the carpet of that is very representative of what the UK represents to a certain degree. And because I keep thinking about, and I'm always thinking about it, ever since the Mr. Bates versus the Post Office limited series came out with the documentary companion piece, you've seen what it's done for those people, which is amazing and so well deserved. And obviously that affected white, black and brown people. That affected everybody basically. And so many people have got the justice they deserve, which is amazing. However, when it comes to Windrush, I'm still waiting for, our limited series and documentary companion piece, which literally turns the tables of all these young people who came here as babies and then were shipped back to Jamaica or any Caribbean island and are just there having to, start their whole life again. So what work have you done within the Windrush campaigning, and why is it so important for you to be part of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I want to pick up on the Mr. Bates thing, and then I'll talk about like kind of how I got involved in the campaign and what we're doing now, because it comes up so much when I'm in kind of meetings with people who have been affected by the scandal or people who are campaigning on it. You know, whereas we need our own Mr. Bates and documentary companion piece, because we need that kind of pop culture moment so that we can then do, you know, it moves public opinion, and then we can do campaigning from that, because that was so successful. I mean, I wouldn't say like, you know, they're still having to fight for justice in other ways. So like, I think they would say like, it's not done, but I think they would also 100% agree that that show like shifted the dial massively. And with Windrush, we had like a really amazing TV drama that came out. I can't remember the year, but it was like much closer to when it became a mainstream kind of issue. Do you remember Sitting in Limbo?
Yes,
and
yes,
and it was excellent, and it won a BAFTA, and it did really well, but it didn't have that same impact that Mr. Bates did. And so I do agree with people who say, do you know what, we kind of need another moment like that. And I do know that there's at least one show that has been commissioned. Obviously, as you know, just because a show's been commissioned doesn't mean it's getting made.
Nope.
So, you know, we'll see. And like, I think, you know, it has a really good shot. You know, it's not my place to talk about the details of it, but I think it does have a good shot. But that said, we know how TV works. So that's no guarantee it's getting made. The lead-in time is long, so we'll see. But I think there is space for like much more kind of creative responses that tell the story of the scandal to a wider audience. And I think that'd be really important for campaigning. And I really want to see more of that. There's been lots of amazing theatre productions, which are great, but I think like a more kind of like strategic effort to get more stuff on Windrush in the public sphere that connects to people in their day-to-day and tells the human story would be hugely impactful for us as campaigners. So I really hope to see more of that, because we haven't had like a Mr. Bates moment for Windrush, not in the same way, and I think we benefit from it. But yeah, I mean, TV, that's why I follow your page, because I'm like, that's an interesting industry.
Very. Listen, I've been close with my own commissions, and then they were just like, "Oh, we're not making anything anymore now. We may have said yes, but we're just not doing it." So I was like, "Oh, okay." Cool. So yeah, but I think also like you made a good point about, especially in pop culture, you have to kind of keep talking about it. You know.
Yes.
Like they're doing another documentary about Damilola Taylor's murder. You know, he was murdered, half a century ago now. Crazy, right? So you have to keep talking about these things, because it does make change, as much as people don't think it does. And, we know the story. It's for new people to discover the story. It's for new people to be reminded of it. And so, you know, it has to keep going. There has to be loads of documentaries about it, loads of, you know, scripted adaptations. You know, it just has to be a conversation that continuously moves forward, because how you could really disrespect, you know, a group of people who made such an impact to this country's economy when you needed them the most, you know, and you provided this kind of like safe haven and this way of like, this is such great opportunity, for only years later to turn around and say, "Oh, you're not British. You need to go back." You know, like that is a real slap in the face, you know? And I think, and you can flip it on its head to, you know, nationalists, because they could be in the exact same position if they were originally from Germany, for example. And then, you know, it trickles down. You know, there's so many ways. So I think it's great that you're part of it and what you're doing, and that you keep pushing forward. So it's like, obviously, it's happened like almost a decade ago. You know, what has the impact been since then for yourself, like what you've seen and the work you've done, and like what's the hope? Obviously we know the hope moving forward, but like how's it going at the moment?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag at the moment, and definitely there's so much more to be done. So when I started working on it, when I was at the Runnymede Trust, that was 2017-18, and it became a big media story. And this was really because of a lot of amazing reporting by The Guardian and Channel 4, but really from people who are affected by it directly, who became campaigners. No, I don't know if they necessarily wanted to, but somebody needed to, and they did. And they really stepped up, and they were on the news telling their story, talking about their experience, and that encouraged more people to come forward. And it became this really big media moment. And I remember when I was at Runnymede and I was at an event. It was hosted at one of the high commissions. So that's kind of like an embassy, but for ex-Commonwealth countries. And one of the Caribbean high commissions hosted a press conference because there was a Commonwealth heads of state meeting that year, and it happened to be in London. And so they were asking the then Prime Minister Theresa May to meet them to talk about, this issue that keeps coming up in the media that people keep coming to the high commissions to ask for support about. And Theresa May refused to meet them. And so that became the news story. And it really snowballed from there, because I think it was a bit of a surprise to a lot of us that, and it sounds a bit dark, but I also think a lot of us will resonate with it being the truth, is that a lot of us were surprised that a story about predominantly working class Black people would resonate with the public and that they would care about it to the extent that they did. But they did. And, even the Daily Mail, even Piers Morgan, I went on talk radio with Julia Hartley-Brewer, and she was like, this is outrageous. And they do say if you've got the Mail and you've got the Guardian, then you've got a huge chunk of the country. And so it was kind of a wild experience for I was in my mid-20s, so it's a early career campaign to work on, and one that resonates with me because I'm Jamaican heritage, and my grandma was part of the Windrush generation. My dad was born in Jamaica, so it felt like quite a monumental thing to be working on. But the government did act quickly once they were publicly shamed. And so we did an event in Parliament. And I don't know if I'll ever have an experience like this again in my life, where something that's normally just, some people come who are interested. This was packed. Media there, broadcasters, cameras. They brought, Caroline Noakes came, who was the minister at the time, and apologised to the people affected. And after that, there was there was also a petition by Patrick Vernon, a prominent Windrush campaigner, that brought a lot of attention to the scandal. So there's a lot of people working on it, and it kind of crescendoed. And so the government were like, we have to act because it's embarrassing for us. And they announced a few things. So they announced a review into what went wrong called the Lessons Learned Review, compensation scheme, the Windrush compensation scheme, and a scheme for people to regularise or to sort out their status to prove that they have the right to live and work in the UK. And that was a huge win. And from that point, then a lot of people who were effective have been campaigning to improve those schemes, which is really slow and hard work, and they've done an amazing job. The different political parties, kind of put out their stall for how they're going to support the Windrush generation. Obviously, one of those parties is now our government, and they made a few commitments of what they were going to do. So one was to hire a Windrush commissioner, which they have done, and I think he's doing a very good job. One was some kind of it's a kind of boring, very policy thing that I won't get into, but it is important still. And then the third was to open up the compensation scheme so it works better, essentially. They called it a fundamental reset. And the problem that we have at the moment is that people are getting really low offers. So I think over the course of the scheme since it's been opened, the average payment is about £30,000, which is nothing to be sniffed at. But at the same time, if you've lost your home, been deported, been fired from your job because you can't prove that you have the right to work here, that is the mental health impact as well as the financial
Yeah.
impact, the loss of your pension contributions is
Mm.
huge. Some people were homeless. There was one story of a man who was sleeping in a bin shed. This is
Yeah.
really extreme. People got deported and died and never got to come back. They missed the funerals of their families. So, an average of 30,000 is a disgrace and highly offensive. So that should not be an average. And the reason for that is, one of the reasons for that is that people don't get access to funded legal representation when they're applying, which you do for most of the other kind of big scandals. So, as they should, I want to clarify, everyone deserves that. But Lambeth Children's Home, Redress Scheme, Infected Blood, the post office schemes, there's a few schemes for them. They are all entitled to it, and as they should be. But why is Windrush the only one that doesn't have that? And there was like a big research report that was done that kind of looked into people's cases in like really fine detail and followed them through their journey as they applied. And when they didn't have support of a lawyer, the average was, I think, about £11,500 payout, and then when they had a lawyer, it was about 83,000. And that's such a huge disparity, and it just really shows the importance of having a lawyer who can help you know what you need to write in the right way, help you as you relive some of the deepest traumas in your life. And Windrush is the only scandal that doesn't have that. And I'll leave it open for people to interpret why they think that is. But it's a huge, huge problem. And that hasn't been resolved by the government. And I say for me, that's like the biggest, most substantial intervention that they could do to try and improve the outcomes of people on this. But it's deeply frustrating because it's very easy to make commitments, before you're in power, but what's important is what you see when you're in power.
I totally agree with that. Because, like you said, when it was like the big media breakout of this, like almost a decade ago, yeah, that was great. But then it became old news, And so, but these lives of people are still affected by this, to this day, and it's just, yeah. So we'll pause it there because that could be a whole nother episode.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because I think I'm quite lucky that, because my family's Jamaican as well. I'm quite lucky that none of my family was personally affected by that. So I'm very lucky about that because I have so many, my aunts, my uncles, grandparents, cousins, like all came here as like either children or adults. But luckily, they weren't affected by that. But you never know. Like, you never know. And it could have been family members I don't know who were affected. Do you get what I mean? So,
Totally.
but yeah. But you also mentioned, obviously, you are an author and you wrote your book, Black Girl, No Magic. So tell me about that. Why the title, Black Girl, No Magic? What was the inspiration behind that?
Yeah, so the inspiration behind that this was kind of the 2010s, so you're a millennial as well, and there was a big movement, which I supported and loved, by the way, that was about Black Girl Magic and kind of highlighting all the ways that we're amazing, essentially, and that we succeed against the odds, and just generally kind of recognizing the creativity and the resilience and the joy that comes from being a Black woman. But I guess the limitation of that, but the flip side of that is that then it doesn't really leave space for being a fully formed human, basically, that is flawed and gets to mess up and gets things wrong and makes mistakes. And for me, like, true progress would be, of course, we get to celebrate our wins, and I'm always gonna, I see a post or an article about a Black person succeeding, and I feel like I'm succeeding as well, and that I don't think will stop, and I don't want it to. But we shouldn't have that pressure of always having to be incredible. I think especially to be accepted or to be given rights. Right? It always made me think of a story. I think there's been a more recent one now when someone in France saved someone from a building, like a really tall building, and they climbed the building to save people, incredible, should absolutely be celebrated. You should get an award for that. Incredible bravery. But then he was given citizenship after that.
I remember this.
Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember that. Yes.
And I do, yeah, of course he should be rewarded, but, you know, our rights become conditional on us being exceptional. And I do find that to be a problem, because we're still people if we harm other people. You know, I don't mean extreme harm, but the normal interpersonal things you do when you don't treat someone quite the way you should, or you go to a party and you embarrass yourself. Like, we're still worthy of respect. And I felt like that was kind of the thrust of the argument that I wanted to put out there. And I also don't want to live my life begging for approval from a society which may never see me as human anyway. So I wanted to live my life on my own terms while still trying to, you know, do good. But I just don't want to be a beg, basically. It's kind of some of the argument of the book.
Right.
Yeah. Right. But yeah, like, what do you want your life to be? Not, you know, so that certain institutions think that we're worthy. Mm-hmm. You know, like, who do you want to be? Like, no. I would say was like the thrust of what I wanted to say.
No, I totally get that, because I remember that era. You know, it became a buzzword, which was great, Black Girl Magic, you know. And then I remember the conversation that was steering away from that, because a lot of Black women were coming out sharing how they have this pressure and they have the need from everyone else to be everything, you know, the one who has it all and has to carry the burdens of everything. And that's a lot. And I think it was really about getting to a place where showing that Black women are multifaceted, they're flawed, they are magic, but they also have days when they are not feeling like magic, or they can be a bitch. But we are literally like flawed, so we have all different emotions, and we go up and down. So it's about reaching that point where you're just seen for who you are, and you respect all levels of who I am as a person. And if I have an off day, that doesn't mean that you have the right to classify me as that off day 24/7. And that's the issue, you know, like, so I get it. I definitely get it. And I think we're in a good place with a lot of like representation in the media. It's still obviously so much, you know, ways to go. But like, one thing I loved about Insecure by Issa Rae was that, like, you saw so many different Black women who were completely different and had all different, you know, they were all insecure in their own way, like we all are, but you showed it in different ways, and you showed them as real people, because we know those type of Black women. So it was really good to have that representation. So I think what your book represents is important. I think, like you said, when you take away from trying to uphold something of the opinion of people who still don't give a crap about you, that's when your mindset changes, you know. Because, you know, the saying of like, oh, well, you can't do this because, you know, it represents all Black people, makes us look bad, or the stereotype. It's like, who are you talking about? Like, who are these people you're saying it looks bad in front of? We don't need to say who it is, because you and I both know what I'm saying. So like, who is this? You know, oh, we can't have Top Boy because, you know, they're just going to view us as this. Who's they? Who's they?
Thank you. Who is they?
Who's they? Because I always say this, right? I've had conversations with non-Black people who know me and still view me in the exact same way as what the negative connotations of Black people are. So I think when Black people realize that certain demographics of people, not everyone, they're going to view you this way regardless of how you talk, how you dress, how you act. So stop that. Just live your life. Live your life for you. So I love that. I love that you wrote that book. It's so important.
Thank you.
So important. So we've got all your career covered. Let's get into this May 7th election, because yeah.
It's spicy.
Because let's go. Because honestly, I'm torn with this whole like May the 7th election. I will say I'm a Labour person. I have been voting for Labour since I turned 18. I was saying in my previous episode, Lib Dem almost had me in the first half when I was 18. Then I was like, came to my senses. And
they
I
got
said,
me,
no.
you know.
Oh no! See, I know. I fell for the trap. I fell for the trap when I was 18. And I was like, Nah, I always remember my tutor was like, "Don't fall for the hokey doke. They're going to raise the student loans." I was like,
Yeah.
"Okay, enough said. Enough said." I went for Labour. I was like, "Yes, voted for Gordon Brown and all."
Oh, I
Okay,
love
with his
good old
bigot,
Gordon.
that bigot gate.
Oh my gosh.
Literally,
Now that would get him votes.
literally. Oh my gosh, that was hilarious. Not the
Oh,
hot
man.
mic moment, but and it's like, I think we are such in an interesting space because of where we are. Keir Starmer has been in power for what, 18 months, if that, and there's been so much talk. Obviously, there always is. But, like, why do you think, like, we are in this state at the moment as to where Labour is? And, there's so much talk about, obviously, reform, but then I saw they were going down in the polls. So I'd love to just get your thoughts on, like, where you think things are right now and where people might lean towards May 7th.
Yeah, it's a big question. And I think I'll take the first part about like why has been doing what it's doing. And is being a Labour is quite a surreal thing. And I met loads of amazing people, which have restored my faith in politics to some extent. But there's loads of different factions with different beliefs, and they kind of like fight for control of the party. And that battle is very much present at the moment. So, there's constant rumours of people gunning for the leadership, who's going to come in after Keir Starmer, if Keir Starmer ever steps down or there's a serious leadership challenge. But a lot of the policies that, I find, abhorrent, kind of around immigration and citizenship and settlement, around Palestine, they are around kind of the 2-child limit, those things, obviously that now has been scrapped, but those policies, they're a particular way of thinking within the Labour Party, that you have to try and appeal to potential reform voters in order to win an election. And they obviously won in 2024, and they would have done a lot of research into how do you kind of try and win these different groups of people that have different value systems over different issues and bring them all together in disparate parts of the country and make sure you get enough of them in the right areas to win. And they did that, well enough to win a general election. But what I would say has happened after that is that they think that the way to, or at least before, I think now, bit of a free-for-all, is that the way to keep winning is to appeal to people that might be interested in the Reform Party at the expense of all the evidence from, different research organisations, different polling companies that says that there's a big risk to people who are more progressive that have voted for the Labour Party because they believe in progressive values. And there was this belief that, those people at the end of the day, when it really comes down to it, will have to vote for us to stop reform. But they've not built in or anticipated that there would be a new Green Party leader that would reinvigorate the Green Party, that really understands political communications and understands social media and its power and understands narrative. Zach Polanski's done an amazing job at knowing how to speak to the concerns that affect most of us who aren't extremely wealthy, cost of living, and how it affects us, that the status quo doesn't work for us. And Labour just hasn't been able to speak to that. And I think they are trying now. I say now as an outsider. Full disclosure, I'm now a member of the Green Party, but obviously, having been a Labour councillor, I have lots of friends that are still in the Labour Party that I think are really talented and have the right values and really care about their communities. And I want to see them do well. My preference is to see a Labour government that delivers for working class people. I do want to see that. I just don't see that in the way that I'd hope right now. And also for marginalised people generally, people of colour, who are disproportionately working class, disabled people, immigrants, not seeing that. And the Greens have been able to come in with a really coherent narrative saying we believe in those things. And I think there's a bit of like arrogance and hubris really from Labour, thinking those people with those views don't have anywhere else to go. And so we can ignore them, and not just ignore them, but actually offend them. And at one point they even said, you know, if you don't want to be in the party, leave. And you can't be surprised when then lots of people did, and they went to another political party. And now we're seeing this kind of scrambling for narrative and this kind of lack of direction, and now different factions trying to seek control of the party. And we won't really know what's going to happen. I have no idea what's going to happen with Labour. I don't want to try and predict it. I don't know who will win out. But yeah, I mean, I obviously I hope it's the left or the soft left, because I'm left wing. But we'll see. But I also think it's what the country needs and what they're crying out for. The status quo doesn't work for most people, and they have to be able to speak to that. They can't just. They're just like, oh, we'll just tweak some stuff. It's like most people. They've seen I love hash browns. So I've seen hash browns at my Sainsbury's local go up from under £1 to now over £2. And for me, like, it's a big recession indicator. I'm like, inflation is out of control. Like, how's it gone from £1 to, and now it's £2.50. And like, that's my visual reminder. Like, we're not in a good place. Like, how is hash browns gone up to £2.50? And I don't have dependents. My rent is very high, no lies. But, you know, I don't have to care for other people. And a lot of people, they're caring for other people. They have children, they're caring for their parents. Maybe they're on universal credit because they get topped up because their pay from their wages are so low that the government tops them up. Like, that's the benefit system we have. And so you can't then say to people like, oh, you know, things are like, okay, we're going to like tweak some things. People want to know how you're going to change their lives and make it easier because they're going through it. And it's a much wider group of people that are feeling like they're not well off. And when they do the polling and they say, like, what are the biggest concerns that you have right now? Cost of living is always in the top 3. Always in the top 3.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so interesting to me that they obsessed so much for so long. I mean, and still are, about immigration, which is a concern for lots of people in the UK, but that they decided that was the way to go, and not to speak to like people's day-to-day living expenses absolutely baffles me. But I don't work for them, so I don't know like what they're thinking. But I don't know. But it's wild. But I am interested in, because you said that you obviously have supported Labour and now thinking, you know, what do I do now with the locals coming up? And what's driving that? What's making you feel differently and think differently?
I think you've made such a good point. Even like my previous episode in same about the upcoming elections, like Kieran is his name. He said, you know, Labour have a communications issue. And that is the issue. Like what you said with what Zach Polanski has done, they've really understand social media well. They're talking directly to their audience. We know what they stand for. And that's my issue with Labour. Like you said, it was supposed to be about supporting working class people. So that's always what pulled me to Labour, because working class background, you know, that's what I know. I see myself represented with the MPs who are with Labour, you know, so that's all I know to lean towards. I'm not a Tory, you know, I'm not from these different, like, you know, classes that are very middle class, high up. That's not who I am. Nor have my environment, how I was grown and raised, is not like that. So I don't relate to them, you know. And even, let's say now, with the degrees we have and the career we've had, we quote unquote would be seen as middle class, but our bank accounts don't reflect middle class.
They do not.
Correct. So, you know, so that's why I'm like leaning towards that Green Party. But there's this kind of like sense of like, you know, it is silly to say, but, you know, like, okay, I want to vote for Green Party, but then if Green Party don't take up too much seats, and then the seats have gone to like Reform, you know, you just feel like, oh, I'd rather at least Labour be bouncing them out, and that's where I think where my push and pull is, but I think my biggest issue with like Keir Starmer, and even before the general election, it was that he was giving Tory but Labour. He doesn't seem personable. I don't know him. I don't know who he is. I don't know what he stands for. And that's a big issue. And like we said, it is about the cost of living crisis. That is to me, that should be number one for everybody, okay? Because I'm traveling on TFL and I'm like, okay, let me get to here first. And I'll walk the rest of the way because you know what? At least I'm gonna like save some money, like.
Real.
And even the other day, like a few weeks ago, I was like, okay, let me get a monthly pass. It's like, I was like, yeah.
How much is that these days? Because
I need to be in zone 1 to 3, right? Because I work in zone 1, but I live in zone 3. Great, right? That was like 200 and something pounds. I was like. Okay, let me just stick with contactless. Okay,
yeah.
This ain't going. Like, okay, like I can't afford that. Like I can't afford that every month. That's a big chunk of how much money I'm making as a freelancer and somebody who has a part-time job. Yeah, I'm still waiting for invoices to be paid. Like it's not,
real talk.
So I think that's the biggest issue that I think a lot of Brits are facing and why they're leaning towards like different political parties right now. I think Green are definitely on the up. I think I was saying this yesterday, like, Lib Dems have kind of been, I would say they've kind of gone into obscurity. Like, I don't know what's going on with them. They just down, down there, and then you got Kemi talking just nonsense. I'm not hearing her talking about like the issues and I feel like I think May 7th is going to be so interesting come May 8th, because I think a lot of these political parties are going to get a huge wake-up call, and especially going into the next general election in a few years, because they need to actually listen to what voters are saying, what people are saying, and they're not doing that. And I think that's why Green Party is, they will do quite well. But then what are your thoughts again on like reform? Because they're dropping in the polls, but yet, you're seeing a lot of aunties, African aunties, and you're seeing a lot of Asians, South Asians particularly, I think, being reform, campaigners or they are running for local council. Like, so like, what's your thoughts on reform and why so many people of color are part of it as well?
I did a TikTok, like I can't remember when, if it was a few months ago or last year, but I said that more of our aunties and uncles were going to vote for reform and maybe even join reform. And I've been seeing it. I don't know how many aunties and uncles will vote for them, but we're seeing more candidates. There was a Black Caribbean head of a local branch who stood down because of the immigration rhetoric and racism, and he spoke to The Guardian about that, which, from the outside, a lot of us, particularly if we're younger, I think will be like, well, yeah, of course. How did you not, like, clock that was going to happen? Like, come on, please, uncle. Someone come and get that uncle. But I think there are things, because it was similar with the Tories to a certain extent. There was a report done by a pollster called Lord Ashcroft. He's a Tory peer. So he sits in the House of Lords as a Conservative. And he clocked ages ago that there was the potential of attracting black voters to the Conservative Party with the right outreach programme and maybe a softening of some of their harder line views. And under David Cameron, Lord Ashcroft did a big report, and if you look back at that period, you'll see Cameron going to majority black churches and doing outreach to majority black churches. And if you think about the aunties, uncles in your own life, obviously they're all different, but I'd say a decent chunk of them. I don't want to generalize, but also like we do know them, and we do know who we're talking about here. Won't be true for everyone, but quite small C Conservative in terms of values, and that might be around self-reliance. You know, I got here, I did it on my own. Normally they didn't. We, you know, community, family, the community around them, the church, helping people.
Yeah.
People didn't do it on their own. But the feeling that, because, you know, the state was against a lot of people. So that feeling of, I didn't get help from the state in the way that I should have, and I made it and I raised my children, so why can't you? Also, our current immigration system, particularly after leaving the European Union, or when we were voting for Brexit, there was research done when I was at Runnymede, and they talked to people, people of colour who had voted in support of Brexit, and some of them would say, my family can't move to the UK, but someone from Eastern Europe can. And obviously my response to that would be, you know, we should have a more open and fair immigration system for all. But other people's response to that is, why should they come? My family can't come. And, you know, and they, we were part of the empire and we didn't have a choice. So why can't, you know, I can't come here anymore. My family can't join me. But these other people can. And they were like, I don't. And so they were like, I'm voting to leave, because they were like, well, doesn't benefit me. And so there are actually quite a lot of potential value systems that can overlap with the Conservatives and even with Reform. And I think something Reform has done quite well is the separation, which if you really read their manifesto, or even just look at history, we are not safe. And they're not going to, like, if they come and start doing mass deportations, if we look to our US cousins and see what they're doing there, they're not going to differentiate between us because we're second or third generation and look at our passports. They will look at the way that we look. And so we're not going to be protected. But I think what the party can be really good at doing is pretending that that isn't the case and saying, you know, we don't mean you. What we mean are these people that have come after you, and they are getting X, Y, Z, and you didn't get that. And we're just saying that if you're here and you're proud of where you live and who you are, that we represent that. And also that we care about certain traditional values, which I think can really resonate with a lot of older Black people. I can't speak for other communities, but I've seen, from what I've seen and read, there was an article recently in The Guardian, interviewing people of Indian heritage supporting Reform and running for Reform. So it feels like that there are patterns that we can extrapolate. But yeah, they're seeing themselves in those narratives. And obviously I would say, yeah, okay, maybe you're safe for now. But if they get into power, good luck, because all the policies that they've put out suggest that they're not really riding for us. I mean, morally also, obviously, I just don't support Reform and what they're about. No? But yeah, I think they've got a much wider appeal, particularly to an older cohort of people of colour than people often realise. And it's been a trend that's been building for a little while.
Yeah. You dropped a great insight into who Reform voters are, who Reform politicians are. And everything you said, I agree with, and I have family members just like that. You know, I think a lot of the time, you know, as a Jamaican heritage person as well, Jamaicans are very conservative. Don't be fooled by the Bob Marley of it all. Yes. No problem, you know, smoking weed, all that. Don't be fooled, okay? Very conservative. My cousin who came here from Jamaica at 15, no, I'm lying, 17, he told me he's voting Brexit because he was tired. No, it's fine. It's fine. Sorry. He's a hotep. Love him to death.
Oh,
but he's a hotep.
Yeah, I hear it now.
Yeah. He voted out on Brexit, because he was tired of the Europeans coming in and taking the jobs. Mind you, he came here at 17. I was like, what? Then my cousin's dad, he said to me he voted out because he wanted Britain to suffer after what they did to the Caribbean after they ended Windrush in 1973. I said, excuse me? So trust me, those are the people in Reform. So that's why I'm not shocked. yeah, when I see the auntie on TikTok campaigning, yeah, they had to take that video down. Did
No,
you see
I
it?
saw they took it down.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
So those are the people, guys. Like, so don't be surprised. And I think I said this on my previous episode is that some of my closest friends are from the Caribbean. Like, they came here like, what, maybe 5, 6 years ago. They're from Jamaica or Trinidad. And so, like, I remember when we were first hanging out, they argued me down. They were like, look, you can't be judgmental. You can't generalize people. You have to give people a chance. It's not racism. It's not this. I was like, fine. I ended the argument, yeah, saying, okay, you'll see. Then about 3 months later, they were like, oh, yeah, you were right. I was like, of course I was right. Yeah. Okay. Until they understand, because I think a lot of the time when you've come here, and you have a different experience, because you've come from a majority Black country, you've seen yourself represented, you know, that's all you know. Then when you come here, it is a culture shock, until you properly understand. But I think, again, it's like that real world lived experience. And once you understand the infrastructure of how a lot of these countries, European countries, or just, work, then you kind of see how things are. So, yeah, I definitely agree with what you said. So, that's perfect. But, like, where do you see the state of, like, the country moving forward, after the local elections? Because, I feel like this is going to be a huge shake-up, to the members of parliament moving forward, with so many decisions that are going to be made moving forward. Like, what do you predict is going to happen next week?
So I predict that both the Greens and Reform are going to do quite well in the local elections. I see the Greens doing well in certain parts of London, particularly south and east. It will be tight. They'll grow for sure, but the extent to which they will win, I think, will be tight. It's really hard to predict local elections. There's polling and stuff, but it's just not as accurate as it is for the general election. So there's still a lot to play for. But I think the Greens and the Greens in like inner London, for example, and the Reform in the outer boroughs will do well, and they'll pick up seats. Lib Dems will see a little bit of an increase, but not I don't think a dramatic one, but could be wrong. But I think they'll do decently. Big losses for Labour, and I think the Tories, they will have some losses, but they had quite a few big ones in the previous locals. I think they were last year, but I'd have to double check. Yeah, for like some of the county councils and stuff. What that will mean is a huge boost, obviously, for both the Greens and Reform in terms of narratively. If they do well, they'll be able to use that as a springboard to talk about, this is the place to be. We're only going to grow more and more. Get involved now as we start building up to the next general election. What it will mean for the government is tricky. There's a lot of kind of predictions that if the local elections go badly for Labour, that a leadership contest will start quite imminently. But I don't know, just because it doesn't seem like there's a clear successor that everyone in the party wants. Different factions want different things. It doesn't seem like there's like some major front runner that everyone can rally behind. Or, kind of with Gordon Brown, where like everyone knew the successor was Gordon Brown. We don't have that situation now. And also the timing, because of, global uncertainty, whether, just after the local elections is the time to have a leadership contest. They're also really insular. So, they're really, you have to be very party political to find them interesting. And most of the country is worried about whether their energy bills are going to go up significantly, or how bad inflation's going to be on their food shop. So do they care about which faction of the Labour Party succeeds in, their leader that they're backing winning? Is this the right time? So it's hard to say kind of when that will happen. But there will probably eventually be a leadership change, but I don't. Yeah, I'm just yapping. Like, I think there'll probably be a leadership change at some point for the Labour Party, but I
just
don't know.
think there should be, though. I just don't think there should be. I just feel like leave Keir Starmer where he's at, because I don't know about you, but I hated seeing all the leadership change with the Tory government. Now, I'm not a Tory person, but it was just humiliating. What do you mean we went from David Cameron, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak, and now we've got Kemi. We'll get onto her in a minute. But that was too much. Like, I don't follow politics that well as like you do, but like, when has that happened before, where there's been so many different like political leaders like within 14 years? That's ridiculous, and like, I don't want to see that again. I don't want to go through another, because I feel like it's an impossible task for anybody who's gonna be put in that position. I just don't think it's realistic to do that right now. They always want to call for some leadership change. Leave Keir Starmer where he's at. Let's see what he can actually do to come back from this, because he's got 3 more years. Let's see what he can do after this, because like I said earlier, I think this is going to be a huge wake-up call for Labour and the Tory government. I feel like they're both going to be having to rethink what they're going to do next, because you're not listening to the public. Like I've said, you're not listening to them. So you really are going to have to make changes. And the biggest issue is them being personable and not listening to what people want, people need, Like you said, like, energy bills are going up, okay? Listen, my boiler broke down last winter. We was like, okay, what are we going to do? Either get it fixed, it's a minor fix, cool. Are we going to have heating, or are we going to have hot water? Let's decide, and we stuck with hot water, then got electric heaters, You've got to kind of think, okay, because, you're telling us £3,000 to fit in a new boiler. And then on top of that, somebody installing it. Who's got £5,000 sitting around? No.
Not me.
So we just have to deal with the bare minimum, for now. So these are the things that people need answers for, because you're telling me £2.50 for a hash brown. What?
Honestly,
that's ridiculous.
Unbelievable.
That's absolutely ridiculous. So what you said is correct, but I just don't feel like he needs to leave. He needs to just stay there. No, because I don't want that rigmarole. It's embarrassing. Like, across the board, like, even when you look at like Scotland, how they're always trying to leave, okay? Like, they're looking like, what's going on? Because obviously it's a nation, it's a national, election for them, also in Wales. So, they are really looking at potentially losing a lot of Labour seats there as well. So it's very, very interesting. And, where do you think Scotland and Wales are going to lean to? Next week?
So I think Wales would be really interesting. Plaid Cymru, I think, could do very well, but also Reform could do very well also.
Okay.
They have a different system, so it's not first past the post in the Senate. So there could be like a power sharing arrangement between, let's say, like Plaid Cymru, Labour and the Greens to stop Reform.
Right.
But the polling at the moment shows Reform and Plaid Cymru pretty neck and neck. Obviously, those are like overall, it's not like by area, so it doesn't mean that one of them will just like win in that sense. I think they're both going to do well, and it's a case of how well they do. Obviously, there'll be a little bit of increase for the Greens in Wales as well, but obviously, for Labour, it's not looking good in Wales. Wales and Scotland. Labour in Scotland.
Okay.
Has been on a decline for a while. The SNP have had scandals also. So we'll kind of see how that plays out. But I don't think it'll be a good day for Labour there either.
No.
So.
I'm just, like I said, I just feel like this is so like, it's so unpredictable. That's the thing. So that's why I think it's so interesting to see what's going to happen. Like, I'm so intrigued because you just don't know which way people are going to go. And there's so much conversations and so much stuff. So it's like, and I really think this is going to be such a pivotal moment for the next election, because I think, you know, I don't know if it will be another coalition government. I pray that doesn't happen again. But I wouldn't be surprised if that happens again, because there's so many people leaning into different parties, and you know, people want different things out of the current status of the UK. And I think that's why I think this is so interesting. I would want to say next, like, when we're talking about the Tories, you know, I was saying recently that Kemi is in a position where, again, with Labour, I don't know what her policies are or what she stands for, because every time I see her, she's going viral for basically acting like she's speaking on behalf of the Black community, but she's not. So, you know, and so it's like, I'm hearing you say these things, but I'm like, okay, what's that got to do with the general public? You know, and I think, like, she's going around her policy and what she's trying to get out of her position the wrong way, because I don't know why she feels the need to lean so much into the far right, you know, because I just don't feel like they're buying it, you know. And so what's your thoughts on Kemi and where she's taking the Tories, and like, how, do you feel like she is gonna last much longer?
Do you know, honestly, I'm not sure. Like, recently, the Tories have been doing slightly better in polling. I wouldn't say it's like something to massively write home about, but they're doing slightly better. I don't know. I couldn't speak to the driver of that. Like, if it's just that Reform's gone down a bit, so the Tories have gone up a little bit. It doesn't mean that, like, in the locals, we're going to see the Tories do well. And I don't think it means that people think Kemi's doing an amazing job, but that has been happening. I think that Kemi's struggling for relevance because Reform knows how to get a media story. They've got big personalities. They put out extreme policy recommendations that will get coverage. They know how to use social media to their advantage. I don't really get that from the Tories. You know, I'm not on their algorithm. I'm not on their part of, you know, TikTok and Reels, so I'm not getting that. But even things like PMQs and stuff, like, it all seems to, I feel like their approach at the moment is really leaning into culture war issues because they fear irrelevancy. So that's why you've got Kemi coming up and always, like, you know, got the Black community's name in her mouth. It's a way to start a conversation and to get coverage. I don't actually know what her ideology is anymore, other than culture war issues. And I think that does speak to something, that she's not really getting airtime, and so she's trying to find ways to do that. I don't even know what the Tories' policy positions are at the moment. And, you know, I really should, given like what I do for a living, but I think it shows that irrelevance, because that would never have been true for me 5 years ago. I knew most of the Tories' positions, particularly to the things that I worked on, and a lot of them were the bane of my life. And the fact that I don't even feel the need to really know what they stand for also speaks to that irrelevancy. And the only things I can name are Kemi coming in and saying, like, the Black community X, the Black community Y, trans people X. And that's the only things I can, like, note her for at the moment. And I feel that is a tactic to try and stay relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, they've had so many defections from the party to Reform as well. That, I mean, I don't know if it's even fair to call the Tories a major party anymore. Reform feels like the opposition at this point. But they're both being driven and led by Reform's policies and statements. They call it the Overton window. So, like, I guess the space for mainstream discussion in media has been moved so much to the right by Reform that's where like all the major conversations seem to be happening. And fortunately, the Greens have, been like really great at comms and moving it the other way a bit. And I think we just need to see way more of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tories' direction seems to be completely driven by reform and either trying to match them or slightly differentiate themselves from them. I think maybe if they slightly go up in the polls, they might feel it's worth being a bit more moderate to try and like get their own identity back.
Yeah.
But they just seem like a reform light at the moment, and it's all a bit cringe, really.
Yeah, totally agree. I think you have summarized perfectly what most people are saying, because we don't know what Tory government, or the Tory party, sorry, we don't know what their policies are, what they stand for, because we don't. Kemi is just out here talking and slandering us. It's like, those memes like, wait, why am I in it?
Why am I in it?
Literally, like what? Like I saw it the other day talking about how, if they bombed a black church, they would be in uproar, but them bombing or attacking a synagogue, like, didn't get as much noise. I was just like, what are you talking about?
What is she talking about? Like that got as it should, like got loads of coverage, and as it should. But like, I don't know. Yeah. What is she talking about? That didn't happen.
I don't know. Like, what are you doing? Like, I just find it so, it is cringe because, and I think the general public, even non-black people, they see right through it.
Yeah.
And I think that's just what it is.
Yeah.
And I think, obviously I'm not Tory, but like, I think people would respect her more if she actually came out and actually showed what she's actually about. What do you want for the betterment of this country? Instead of you saying, we don't owe them reparations. Like, no one cares about that. Like, look, shush. We're not, you don't need to even worry about talking about that. What do you want to do to make the UK better? What is this about cost of living crisis? The rent, the rental agreement which came out, love that. Can't wait for that to be implemented.
I have to say,
honestly, so
bring
good.
That in.
Finally,
bring that in.
Something. So that's what we want from you. Like, you're the first black leader of a political party. And you could, you could become the first black prime minister, right?
I mean, it could happen.
It could happen, right?
It could, yeah.
Like, do something better,
Like
I'm
anything.
just saying, anything. So, but yeah, that's it on Kemi. Okay, I just had to pick your brains on her because, yeah,
it's a lot.
Like, please, like, even Candace Owens, speaks some sense sometimes, and I'm just
broken
like,
clock.
this much, like, there's no sense ever coming out of Kemi's mouth, none. So
no sense.
Exactly, but no, I definitely agree with your prediction. And I'm really intrigued. I'm definitely probably going to have you back to discuss afterwards.
Yeah,
what happened.
Have to do a debrief.
Exactly. Definitely have to do a debrief because I think, it's going to be so interesting. And I'm also excited because I feel like the UK political climate has been stuck in a battle between Tories and Labour for decades at this point. Please, we could even say centuries if we want to be dramatic. It would be so great to see like the Green Party in power, I think we're on the cusp of that. I honestly do think we are. I don't think we are for reform. I think they're going to gain a lot, but I don't think they're there yet to winning a whole election. I just don't. And I said this in my previous episode. The reason why I say this is because, with like the Tory government, there's a lot of people, they're obviously the right, but a lot of them, I don't think will also lean to reform, because if you look at the standard, like middle class, let's say average white person, then most likely could be with another white partner, or they're with a person who is South or East Asian. That's, and then, so they're already potentially in an interracial relationship, or they could be with a black partner. So I think, or their family, or some of their closest friends who they went to private school with, they could be black or Asian or whatever. I think certain people draw the line when it comes to maybe racism, but classism is probably like a little bit ahead. So I think that's why I think they're still going to have people who will vote for Conservative over Reform. Now, that's not everybody, but, I think there's little pieces. That's what I think.
What I would say,
That's what I
though,
think.
is that we have to, it's not a given. So we do have to speak to people in our lives and like make sure we're making it really clear like how terrible a reform government would be. Like,
True.
They want us all deported. Like that is, maybe they challenge me on that, but they want to bring in some kind of like command, like when they're in power, and how are they going to distinguish like who is targeted by that? I'm making some assumptions, and I think they're fair, and I don't know if people know how extreme their plans are. So we need to communicate with people how bad it is what they're going to propose. It's not just like, oh, a bit like the Tories, but like slightly worse. It would be much worse. And so it is on all of us to like talk to everybody we know to make sure they're aware of that, including our aunties and uncles who think like they will be safe because they were born here, or they came here in 1960 or 1980.
Yeah.
I don't believe that those things will protect any of us. And so the work for us is to like make people aware of that. And obviously to get out and vote for progressive parties and to be smart about how we do that. It's not a given like that they won't win. So like we have to be active to stop them.
Very good point. So, but I'll end it there. Kimberly, it has been great talking to you for the first time and getting to know you and having this discussion. Definitely need the debrief because after this, I'll definitely be in touch. But it was great having you on the show. Where can people find you to like stay up to date on what you're doing and stuff like that?
So people can find me on TikTok as Kimberly Mcintosh 5. So that is KIMBERLY, and it's Macintosh MCINTOSH, because there are lots of ways to spell my name. So you have to make it clear. And on Instagram, it's Kimmy with an I _Macintosh. So that's where I share most of my stuff.
Amazing. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was great chatting about what's going to happen next week and just getting to know you more and what you've done as well. So yeah, thanks guys for listening. You can follow me all of my usual socials. You know them. There's a bunch of them. Stay tuned for new episodes coming soon.